Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to this edition of TByrd Live. So excited. We always have very important informational guests on our show, not only to provide our listening audience with such great business tips, but to also learn about everything everybody else is doing in terms of their pluses, their minuses, and everything in between. And tonight is going to be totally different. We're coming from a completely different perspective, public safety. And I'm so excited. I was excited when we did our pre-show. We actually should have recorded that to be the live show because it was so interesting and so not, I gained so much knowledge. So I want to share everything that I learned in our live presentation tonight with Mr. Frank. I'm not going to try to say your last name. I'm just going to say Mr. Frank. So you go ahead and go with your last name and the name of the business, and we'll start from there.
Hi, thanks for having me on, Trina. My name is Frank Magaha. I'm the owner of ARMOGAN Consultant and Training, which is a public safety training division and center that I created after a long, extensive career in the military and law enforcement. So I'm excited to be here, and thanks for having me on.
I'm excited for you to be here too. You have got some great information that you're going to share with our listening audience, and it's so valuable. I'm so excited. And when we first got on tonight, I told you I've been mentioning you to a lot of people because I have to tell you, Frank, when you first contacted me and I saw, okay, it's a training, it's about law enforcement, is this going to be how is this going to go? I don't like to bring any, misconceptions in. And, that's why I like to do the pre-show meeting to see exactly where it was at. And I have to tell you, you just took me for a complete loop. I was so impressed by not only the service that you provide, but your heart and just your delivery and the way that you actually, you made me feel comfortable in believing in your product so that I would tell everybody I would know, just, for safety reasons, people that just want to understand things better. Sometimes the reason we have so many controversies is because we don't understand. We don't have that knowledge. And I was enlightened and educated in our pre-meeting, and I know I'm going to probably learn a lot more tonight as well, along with our listening audience. And one of the things that is really exciting to me is your career as such a, when I asked you your age last night, I thought, okay, he'll probably say like 40. He probably just looks young for his age. He's probably like 44, 45. And I won't say your age unless you say it, but I could not believe in such a short period of time, your career and the great things that you're doing and where your heart is. Young people are, a lot of young people are pretty much, trying to figure out their way. And it seems like you've known your way for a long time. And that shows in your success that you've had, as well as how you turn that success into a unique niche in the training industry. So I can't wait to get started with you just, telling us exactly where you come from and what you're doing now and that journey, how it's, it's really made you who you are today at your little young age.
Well, like I said, thanks for having me on. And when we spoke before, I think I mentioned it that I can't take credit for any of it. It's mostly all my mentors, whether they know it or not, that really guided me throughout my career. But as you mentioned, yeah, I've been truly just lucky and blessed throughout my career, having good positions. As I mentioned, I was in the United States military. I was in the Navy from the point I enlisted at 18 and finally left for boot camp at 19. And then from there, I winded up I went through SEALs training and man, it was difficult. I wound up getting beat up pretty bad to the point of where I switched over to naval aircrew training. And I finished my career as a naval helicopter crew chief and gunner. And then from there, after I finished 6 years with them, I rotated out after 3 deployments to the Middle East. I rotated out to go into law enforcement. I just had this desire to completely serve my country and my local community. When I got home, I figured that's what I was good at. I wanted to keep doing it. So I rotated out and winded up applying for the National Park Service to stay in the federal system for their law enforcement. And I applied, I got accepted, and I was lucky enough to be made the sergeant of the academy. And then I got recruited right from the academy for my dream position as a backcountry law enforcement officer in the Smoky Mountain National Park. And then after doing that, I transferred up to Washington, D.C. I wanted to get a little bit more urban law enforcement under my belt, where I transferred up to a federal agency in the middle of Washington, D.C., right down the street from the Capitol building. And there, my law enforcement career just really exploded. I was able to get a lot of instructorships. I was the lead protection officer for 2 different presidential appointees, one under President Obama, one under President Trump. I was managed to become a firearms instructor, a federal law enforcement firearms instructor, where after that, I then became the officer in charge of our special weapons unit. And from there, I just kept getting more instructorships, and it just kept growing to the point where I had so many instructorships. I was teaching different agencies such as the U.S. Capitol Police and Security Exchange Commission special agents. And at that point, I had to make a hard decision whether or not I stepped down from law enforcement and pursue a different career, or I keep going. However, I was really concerned about my physical limitations from prior injuries in the military. So I made the tough decision to step down from law enforcement, but then ultimately I couldn't leave the law enforcement or the public safety sector. So I came up and came out with ARMOGAN Consultant and Training. And from there, we just winded up developing a public safety training program across the gambit, both for civilians and for law enforcement. And we teach civilians everything law enforcement knows, and we teach law enforcement everything civilians want them to know. And it just kind of just took off from there, and it's just been a blessing from day one.
And you did kind of leave out something really important. You are on a list that only has a few.
Yeah, I was.
And tell us what that is.
Yeah, so for federal law enforcement, most federal law enforcement go through the Federal Law Enforcement Training, which is the highest award they issue, is the Honor Graduate Award, which about only a few people in the world have. About 30,000 students a year go through the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, and about 6 can actually get that. So it's a 0.009% chance of someone completing that and winning that distinguished honor. So that was just a blessing in itself as well.
And you have that. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. And going forward, fast forward, you leave DC and you move to North Carolina and you open up this amazing school that focuses in on public safety from both perspectives, which is what makes you have a unique niche in terms of this is what I got from talking to you yesterday. You really care about the safety of all communities. And, I just, you gave me some pointers last night. And the first thing I did, because my grandson and my son call us every morning on their way to work and to school. And I passed those tips on. I was like, I had this amazing conversation with this amazing person who cares about the all communities. And I started, my son knew a little bit about some of the laws, but you know how you don't know because you're younger than him, but your mom will probably say, our 30-year-olds think they know more than us older people. And so of course he jumped right in because he knew this. I said, well, you didn't know this and you didn't know that. And he was like, oh no, I didn't. So I said, well, make sure you watch the show tonight because we're going to learn a lot more. But it was just, enlightening to be able to talk about these kinds of safety measures that we all need to be aware of. And for you to have been, as a police officer, federal, state, and local, to still hold that in your heart equally to, your fellow police officers as well as your fellow the residents of your community and communities all over the country, and then try to put this product out there that can reach the vast of every community to me is a great thing. And it's, it's all about caring about everybody, not just your profession. So I commend you on that. So tell us a little bit about your training And you guys better stay tuned in, because towards the end of the show, we got some great opportunities for anyone that's, sat through the show and listened to all of this valuable information. But in terms of you told me last night that you actually, and this I thought was really, really great. You provide your safety training to school districts for totally free. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so any school district, and my wife's a teacher, so I even have more of a passion about it, but any school district, if they want any type of training such as responsive active shooter, or say they have young teens that are getting their driver's license and need to know how to handle a traffic stop or things along those lines, I will go in there, or I will have someone go in there if I can't make it, and go in there and completely teach it 100% for free, and then provide them with recordings or additional training so that they can go back and review if they have any more questions or anything along those lines. And I think it's just important that we build that bridge between, both public safety and predominantly law enforcement, but public safety as a whole, and community members that they serve, and the community members that also serve the public safety measures. So it's one of those things where if I can give back to especially a school district or things along those lines, it's going to happen. All they have to do is reach out and ask, or come across some of our free training online, and it's theirs. And like I said, all they have to do is ask, or hopefully come across it on their own.
Well, I think it should be mandatory when they take the driver's ed. Why wouldn't you want to incorporate safety measures on all levels in the driver's ed program, or in the school drills, or anything? Because some of the things that you taught me yesterday, I mean, they can be translated. It's not just when there's a situation with a police officer, but you could be alert of people trying to break in the house, or just having those skills to be able to protect yourself and keep everyone safe. It's just, to me, a no-brainer. But we talked about content and teaching and all of that, and sometimes it's got its barriers until something happens, and then everybody wants to learn and train, and let's get this right away, instead of being preactive instead of proactive. Or did I say that backwards? Proactive
Yeah.
instead of reactive. Yeah, I did. Because that is just totally important. And you did mention that you actually incorporated your program where they go take the driving tests, correct?
Yes. So we've reached out to a lot of different, just nationally, we reached out to a lot of different driving schools, private driving schools. And the one thing we've always realized, and we did a lot of surveys, we do a lot of community surveys. And the one thing we realized was, driving school, yeah, you're learning how to drive and how to properly operate a vehicle. But statistically, a new driver is almost guaranteed to be pulled over in their first year of driving. Statistically, I mean, it's up above the 98th percentile. So if that's almost a guarantee, then why not add or incorporate that additional training into the measures? And something as simple as we discussed before, where to keep your documentation, or even better yet, what documentation is usually required. Most people don't realize when or if and what they need to properly identify themselves with to law enforcement. So let's just take the gambit, which is the normal across the United States. You usually need 3 identifying pieces of information when operating a motor vehicle. You need your driver's license, you need proof of insurance, and your registration. Well, when you get stopped by a law enforcement officer, they're going to approach your vehicle and they're going to do what's called printing on your vehicle. They're going to touch the rear light or the rear trunk to make sure it's shut and everything along those lines. And they're going to print it. And that's just something that's trained from an old issue that happened a long time ago. And then from there, they're going to approach with whatever they feel more comfortable with, your driver or passenger side. Well, the one thing with law enforcement is they're always taught that the most dangerous time of their career is during the approach of a traffic stop. They have to worry about other vehicles coming in and colliding with them. They have to worry about possibly threats inside the vehicle. So officers are a little bit more on edge at that point in time. And most drivers don't know this, especially a young 17, 16-year-old teenager who is their first time ever interacting with law enforcement in their life, usually. And so they might get nervous. They might start rummaging around. Well, if you know that you need those 3 documents, and you know to keep those 3 documents, say, in the visor above your head on the driver or passenger side, you can just sit there with your hands on the steering wheel. You can roll your window down to whatever level you feel comfortable with, so that you can properly communicate with the law enforcement officer that's stopping you. But this way, you don't have to open up any compartments in your vehicle. You don't have to, which honestly only helps a law enforcement officer out, because he has what's called plain view. Anything he can see allows him to use against you or to use to further investigation. And if you have all that documentation right up above you, you just say, "Hey, officer, I'm just going to reach right up above me and grab my documentation." Now he can't use that, or he or she can't use that as a potential for, I felt threatened, or the person made an overt movement that made me feel scared. And also, you're not giving them more access to go and look deeper into the vehicle. But it's not to prevent a law enforcement officer to do their job. It's to ultimately prevent, or to promote, a safe interaction between both the law enforcement officer and the community member that's being stopped. So we try to push that out to a lot of different driving schools, to try and get it, as you said, to be kind of pre-active, or get it before they hit the road and have to deal with it, rather than afterwards, and they wind up saying, "Hey, I had such a horrible experience with the police the other day, and I don't think I like the cops anymore." So we try to mitigate that as much as possible.
Now, what do you think about, because nowadays with this new technology, they're encouraging you to put your, and I believe some states will allow you to upload everything to your cell phone, so you don't have to do anything but, hold your cell phone up, and then you, of course, have your documents with you all the time, because nobody leaves the house without their cell phone, and if they do, they go right back home and get it. So,
Yeah.
what do you think about that perspective?
I highly encourage it. I highly encourage you to have your documents on your cell phone. However, some states don't actually accept electronic copy. It's not written into law, but down here in North Carolina, they do not accept digital copy of proof of insurance. So I always say it's better to be prepared on both ends. I always recommend that you have a hard copy of all your documentation, because you do need a hard copy of your driver's license. There hasn't been anything quite developed yet that allows you to do that. Mm-hmm. So for your registration, usually you're pretty good, because your tag will say if it's registered when the law enforcement officer runs the tag on the vehicle. But it's still best to have at least a hard copy and a digital copy. I'll say from personal experience, the Geico app, I have Geico insurance on my vehicles, and the Geico app needs a lot of internet to load. So a lot of times you're trying to log in, and it just takes forever to load. And nothing against Geico's app, but when someone's nervous, the last thing they want to do on a traffic stop is say, "I'm trying to pull up my insurance. I can't get it." And then, it just causes the contact to go on a little bit longer than it should. And there's laws that we've kind of discussed before, but there's laws that prevent an officer from extending a traffic stop any longer than necessary to complete the reason for the stop. So if you were speeding, an officer only has so long to complete the ticket for a traffic stop, or a warning for the traffic stop, and then they must let you go unless they have another reason to investigate further, or a reason to delay, such as you keep telling them you're trying to pull up your insurance. So you're not really doing yourself any good there if you pull up a digital copy and your cell phone's dead, or you can't get the app to load, depending on where you're at. I know here in North Carolina, in the mountain region, you don't always have cell phone reception, so it makes it difficult to pull up those documents sometimes.
Yeah, we know about that North Carolina mountain region. We were coming back from Atlanta, visiting our friends in our RV, and I can't remember the road we were on, but it took us all the way up in the mountains and all the way over and down, and we should have just gone straight, and we could have been home 3 hours sooner. So, and it was no service. It was beautiful, but it was scary, and it was it was just, I don't have to do that again. So, back on topic. So you also said that there's a couple of tips that, we talked about last night, which I thought were so important. And just what you just said just a few minutes ago, most people don't know that there's a time limit. They don't know the laws. They, get the law from Law and Order or some type of TV show, which that's all television. That's why it's called TV. But you mentioned the safety measures to take when you do get pulled over and you step out the car. Can you review that? Because I think that's so important.
Yeah. So once again, going into the law aspect of it and being a legal instructor for law enforcement, it's a very delicate line to walk especially for law enforcement. Law enforcement have a lot more restrictions than most people think they have, but other times they think they're violating someone's rights, but it might not necessarily be true. There might be what's called give law enforcement discretion, and one of those things is taking a person out of the vehicle. Law enforcement have that discretion to take someone out of the vehicle, and it was actually ruled on in a court case, and the justices ruled that it is a minor, and I'm paraphrasing. I'm going to try and quote it as best as possible, but I'm paraphrasing what they said. It is a minor inconvenience to the operator and the passengers of the vehicle compared to the safety for police officers. So if an officer at any point in time can, and I'm going to use the term reasonably articulate because that's the legal jargon, which doesn't take much for an officer to reasonably articulate why they felt there might be a safety concern, an officer can pull anyone out of the vehicle. And it's best that you don't try to argue or deny the officer at any point in time. The best thing you can do is just explain to the officer, okay, no problem. I'm going to roll up my window. I'm going to exit the vehicle and I'm going to lock my vehicle because I don't want any damage or anything like that going onto my vehicle. And you're doing that to protect your rights because you don't want any officer doing an illegal search and seizure and having access to your vehicle. And at the same time, as you exit the vehicle, you want to make sure that the officer's clear so that they can't say, hey, they almost hit me with the door or anything along those lines. So it's best to just let the officer know what you're going to do. And if the officer becomes agitated or anything along those lines, that's fine because normally they're wearing a body camera. And I'm going to kind of backpedal here a little bit. There's no law against this yet. Some municipalities have tried to implement laws, but they've all been taken to court. There's nothing illegal so far against recording a police officer. So as we said before, everyone has their cell phone. So I always recommend you record the interaction. And I'll kind of go into this a little bit later. One other thing that my company does is we do officer misconduct reports and evaluations on the outside so that people can't say that, oh, well, the internal affairs division didn't do their job. We're a completely independent company that does it so that we can actually review the officer. And we have a whole standard operating procedure to do that. But it's just best that you record, and then that way you have evidence that supports what you say happened, and then the police officer has evidence to support what they say happened via their body camera. But yeah, an officer tells you to step out of the vehicle. Don't resist. Don't ask why. Just comply on that one. They actually have the law on their side. And the minute you start, I hate to use the term, but the minute you start resisting, that's what they're gonna charge you with is resisting a lawful order or resisting a law enforcement officer at that point in time. So it's best to just comply and hash it out in court. That's what the court system is there for. And you'll never win that battle if you try to argue or fight with the law enforcement officer on the side of the road. There's just too much case law supporting police in that matter. So it's just best to go to court. And a lot of times those cases are going to get dismissed real quick by a prosecutor because the prosecutor will easily say that, hey, if I take this to court, I'm probably going to fire one of your police officers. So it's just one of those things where if you have that interaction or that, I don't want to say altercation, that interaction, that contact with a police officer, and they ask you to step out, they have the law on their side. Your best bet is to just step out and then lock your vehicle so that they don't perform an illegal search of it, and just kind of go off into a safe area, stand where they tell you to stand, unless it's not, I mean, if they tell you to stand in the middle of the road, obviously don't stand in the middle of the road, but just advise them where it is. And you can always ask if you feel like an officer is not not following or maybe encroaching on your rights, you can always ask for a officer to bring a supervisor out on scene.
Okay, great. And you, to reemphasize, the locking, when you get out of the car and you lock the car, that actually, you said yesterday that now requires the officer to get a search warrant.
Yeah, there's a
Can
few
you elaborate on that?
exceptions. There's a few exceptions to that called mobile conveyance. There's a little bit less reasonable expectation of privacy, which is once again another court term and legal term. There, in a vehicle, there's a little bit less, but once again, the Fourth Amendment protects your person, property, and effects, which a vehicle would fall under effects from illegal search and seizure. So an officer has to be able to prove, in order to search a vehicle, they have to be able to prove that there's evidence of a crime in there, and they can't do it just based on a gut feeling. So I'll kind of go off on a side little tangent. A court case passed a while ago that prevents cops from pulling you over and making you wait so that they can get a dog to come out and sniff and alert around your car, say if they're looking for some type of contraband or illegal substance. As I said before, the officer only has a reasonable amount of time to stop you for what they originally stopped you for and write that ticket or write that warning and then release you on the way. They can't hold you, or the court deemed it unreasonably detain you any longer than necessary to complete the action for which they stopped you. So they can't detain you and say, well, if you don't give me consent to search, I'm going to get a dog out here to alert on it. That's completely illegal. They can't do that. Once again, if they do that, don't resist or anything along those lines. Just record it and then
go to court.
Thank them later for paying off your house in the lawsuit.
Yeah. Go to court. Yeah. So listen, I've never heard of any training program or any even information service, commercial or anything, where the safety, not only, and I don't want to really just kind of lean towards the safety of the public, but also the safety of the police officer, everyone involved. And you would think that, with the times that we live in, that would be something really huge to, like they did when we had an epidemic with the pandemic. Everybody needed to be educated on the safety. Safety was at the top of the list, the mask, to this, to that. So I don't understand why that's, well, it doesn't matter because we have you and you're going to just blow up after this show. But on a serious note, hopefully your business is going to grow and, more people are going to see it's got the greatest value that you can think of, especially for our young people and for older individuals as well, who may get really, really nervous because, I remember it was snowing outside in New Jersey, where you're from, by the way. Hey, New Jersey. And I was about to, I was going through the intersection in Northfield, and the lights turned yellow. And I was, I didn't want to slam on brakes because it was snow and ice. So I kind of, by the time I got to, the guy pulls me over. My brother was a police officer, so I'm not like afraid of police. But, because, I actually have family members. But I was just so nervous. And, I'm an older person, so I was kind of nervous. And he just came right over, calmed down. I saw exactly what happened. Just, make sure you try to go a little bit slower, because of this ice, which I thought I was already doing that. But he wasn't, irate or anything like that. But you do get that sense of urgency and that feeling. And so it's not just with young people, it's with older people as well. So, being able to have a safety course at any age, to me, is just a no-brainer. And for you to develop a program based on not only, your research and your experience and knowledge and, especially all the roles that you've played, and to still see the need for this, it speaks volume. Speaks a lot of volume. And you definitely said that, safety is your concern for everyone involved. Now, my next question is, and we talked about this in terms of firearms. There, you have a safety program that you teach people who are brand new at purchasing a firearm, and you want, that's again, safety to be the main ingredient in all of it, so that you learn how to properly use your firearm and, accidents don't happen. Tell us a little bit about that division of your company. And again, it's $47. How could you go wrong?
Yeah, so as I mentioned a little bit earlier, I hold a firearms instructorship from the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. I'm also a distinguished weapons expert with them. And then I hold a couple state police certifications as a firearms instructor, NRA firearms instructor, just because that's pretty much mandatory across the country. And then I also hold a range safety officer instructorship from the NSA. So I decided that I was really coming across a lot of statistics and details, and I'm just a geek for knowledge. I'm always reading and trying to learn as much as possible. And in the last 3 years, we've probably had over 8 million new firearm owners. And I think the numbers just came out for 2021. I think it was 5.4 new firearm owners, first-time firearm owners, just in 2021 alone. So it's just one of those things where people are able to kind of go through, they go to a gun store, and the gun store says, hey, we know everything you got to do to be able to purchase a firearm, whether it's a handgun or a rifle or a shotgun. This is what you got to do. But they have never had any training for it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was thinking about, well, how do I give the basic training to as many people as possible without discouraging anyone? And I've run into a lot of instructors out there, and I love, and I have some great mentors as firearms instructors, and almost all of them have in-person training. Well, people have a hard time going out and paying, $100 to $200 for a 4-hour course in person, and whether they have the time to or not. So I said, let me develop one completely online. I'm in it, I'm instructing. I have a few other co-instructors that are in there and we just make it a very casual thing where I'm in there just kind of talking, just like how you and I are, just explaining the basics, understanding and operation, nomenclature of firearms. And we have 3 different courses that just for the basics. We have basic pistol, which covers semi-automatic and revolvers. We have basic shotgun, which covers the gambit of different types of shotguns. And we have basic rifle, which covers the gambit of different types of rifles out there. And the big thing I wanted to teach people was the safety aspects of being able to manipulate and handle their firearm, plus the legality of it and the safety of storage. There's federal law and state laws across the board that have mandatory requirements for storing firearms. So if you store a firearm, improperly, and a child can access it, that's actually a crime. And
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't even matter if the child does anything wrong with it. Is if the child can get access to it and you improperly stored the firearm, you're looking at potential fines or jail time for that. Not to mention the potential to lose access to your Second Amendment right. So when I was developing it, once again, I did a lot of surveys, and I asked a lot of new owners, what would you all love to see? And beta tested a lot of new firearm owners, and we just developed a nice, easy, approximately about 2-hour safety course where they can just go online, access it, replay it all as much as they want. There's 1,000,001 handouts for them, and it even teaches them basic marksmanship so that they won't waste ammo, because that's expensive these days.
Oh, yes.
And just kind of goes over what they need to know, especially if they're going to store it in their house. If they bought it for some type of home defense, or maybe they bought it for some type of sporting event, such as shooting competitions or hunting or things along those lines. I just wanted to make sure that they are properly handling it for their safety, legality, and then the same, even when they're transporting it. And if they were to get stopped by a police officer, that they would know what to do and how to properly transport their firearms so they stay out of any type of legal trouble.
Excellent. So you have online classes. What about your in person? So tell us a little bit about your facility. You have a facility where you hold classes in person, or is it most of it virtual?
So mostly everything we have is virtual. However, we do come out and do in-person training, and we'll come to different locations. If we get a request for it, we'll come to different locations. I'll rent out an entire range if we're going to do firearms training. If not, we'll look at a center or something along those lines, and I'll come out and I'll do that training. Maybe it's tactical medicine training for law enforcement. I'll come out and I'll either teach it at their training facility, or I'll teach it, say, at a EMS or fire station or something along those lines, just so that the most people can get their use out of it. And it might upset some people, because I'll go out and I'll do training for an entire law enforcement department, and I'll ask them, hey, do you guys have a training facility? They'll say, no, we don't. Okay, well, meet me over at the fire station located near you all. And at that point in time, it doesn't matter to me if the fire station sticks around and gets the training as well. That they might hash it out later with the law enforcement officer saying,
Yeah.
"Hey, you got to chip in for paying for this." But yeah, I just want to give as much knowledge out there and as much training as possible. It's so hard for people to get training these days, not because there's not the training out there, but it's one of those things where, is the right training getting in front of them? And say for police, are their departments sponsoring it? Are they paying out of pocket for it? And then the same for civilians. It's most of them don't even know training out there exists for them.
Exists. Correct.
And it's just so hard, and it kind of breaks my heart a little bit when I come across someone and they're calling me after something bad has happened. And I'm just, man, I wish you knew of this. I would have given you this course had I known this was going to happen to you, just so this wouldn't happen to you. So
Let me ask you too, because I was thinking last night after we talked about, because you're more of module based training, and I was thinking more of a curriculum based training. And when I say curriculum, I mean like a course, like a 12-week course. Like, say for example, you're a high school student and you wanted to be a safety officer, or you wanted to do safety training as subsidiary of your company, or just start their own thing, or they just, that's their interest. Is your curriculum, are you thinking of getting your curriculum state approved so that someone could go get a training grant to attend a full-time curriculum as a career path? Have you thought about those kinds of
yeah,
sections?
so I think one of the things that a lot of my colleagues and I don't want to say coworkers, but a lot of associates I know within the profession that I'm in are asking me the same question: is, hey, are you going to develop this? And the big one right now is, being a veteran and former military individual. A lot of people are, hey, do you accept the GI Bill? And that requires federal approval and a certain time limit. And we're working on meeting those demands right now. And we're actually at the point now where I've learned that it's actually, as I said before, it's difficult to get these agencies or schools to kind of cover this stuff for their students, which is why we do everything for schools for free, because we just want that information out there. And then, but say for a department, say if it's an EMS department and we're teaching them tactical medicine, just in case there's the worst thing that could happen, an active threat situation somewhere, EMS aren't usually trained, or at least a basic EMT isn't usually trained how to handle that. They can obviously triage and everything like that, but they don't know how to handle, well, am I in the hot zone right now when there's shots still being fired, or still an active threat out there? So I really am pushing that to kind of get it approved federally is my first goal, is to have some type of federal recognition, or national recognition, I should say, because each state requires their own individual certification process. I know I looked up at Maine for one of the driving schools up there, and they said, hey, can you get this state certified? And I can actually get a grant for this. And I looked at the state certification process, which is no problem. We meet the criteria, but it's on a backlog for about 2 years.
Oh
So
man. Well,
yeah, so
listen,
it's
let
one
me
of
give you
it's
a
one of
little
those
tip.
things. as I fill it out and as I go, it's one of those things where I'm looking at it and I'm like, I think national is the way to go first, so that it's accessible to more people and that they can use funds to kind of access it that way, and rather than to go state right now. But we do offer extended membership packages. So one new program we're offering is a firearms membership, and I mean, we have tier systems, but the highest tier system is $15 a month. I didn't want it any more expensive than a gym membership, for the sheer fact that, like I said, I want the information out there, and it runs through just a series of different things, anywhere from marksmanship to safety to everything. And then at the end of it, or I shouldn't say at the end of it, once a year, anyone who's a member, I invite them down to Western North Carolina, and we'll run through a whole week's worth of in-person training and everything at no additional cost. They just got to travel down here and get themselves lodging. But then I rent out an entire range so we can put everything they learned virtually to the test, and I can show them how much improvement they've had since going through the membership.
Well, let me give you a couple of tips, and we can talk more off the air about this. But there is a entity within the State Department of Education and Labor. It exists every state. And that is what they call private vocational schools. That is what we are. We are a private vocational school since 1990. And what has happened, and I'm not sure if it just started with the pandemic situation. No, actually, it was before the pandemic. But you're from New Jersey, and what you may want to do is collaborate with an existing approved private vocational school. And I'm going to be first on that list because you're from New Jersey.
No worries. I'm actually typing this as you're talking right now, so bear with me.
And so, we'll talk more. But what happens is that if you partner with an existing state-approved school, that agreement between you'd be like a subcontractor. So I would hire you. We would get your training program approved by the state. Then we would subcontract with you to actually complete the training. And everyone that's interested in the training can go over to the local one-stop center, which exists in every state in the United States, and they could be eligible for a $4,000 to $5,000 training grant to take the training, as long as you provide a credential at the end. And of course, your curriculum you already have. It just needs to be critiqued, and you need to have benchmarks. You need to be able to prove at the end of a week that student has learned and passed this, they passed the criteria for that week, so that they can advance to the next week. And typically those programs are anywhere from 10 to 12 weeks. Students usually they have to attend class 20 hours. And so that will get you inside quicker than that waiting list to get approval, because you're working with an existing school that already has the approval. And for me or any other existing vendor, state-approved vendor, to submit my program, and I've got like 20 years of doing good business with them, it takes 3 to 4 weeks to get your curriculum. They're going to scrutinize it as well, especially if you're going, like I'm a computer school. We just did an approval for working with autism children. So, they look at, what program you've been approved for. And if it's pretty much in line with what you've been doing, then you're in. But if it's something different, then of course they don't treat you like a new school, but they do look at your curriculum to make sure it's effective and it's actually working. So that would be something definitely you may want to consider, simply because of the fact that it's just needed. And I would say to you, Frank, is to create your own lane. Why wouldn't there be a position outside of a law enforcement agency, EMTs or whatever, where you go to school for 12 weeks, maybe even longer, and you get a little bit of all of that, but it's all based around safety. Safety when you pick the person up who's been in a car accident, and you got to do whatever. All the things that are not being taught in these existing programs, here you come with this consolidated program that is not a duplicate. It's just filling in the blanks around safety.
I had mentioned this to you earlier, how I have mentors that don't even know they're my mentors. You just became one of my mentors. I'm trying to write all this down as we're talking.
We'll go over it. We'll go over it. We'll go over it more because
that's fantastic. I mean, to tell you the truth, I took the path of going directly to the community and to the public just to kind of get it out there as much as possible. But I didn't even think about utilizing and overlapping with current existing programs such as that. So I appreciate it.
And you have the fact that once you get in with a school, now your state, you can do business throughout the state. So when you for example, and you're from New Jersey, we're actually located in Atlantic County, but our credential, our certification covers the entire state of New Jersey. And when you are virtual, it's a no-brainer. The only thing that you have to do is you have to, let each county one-stop center know you exist. They know you're on the state website, which to me is ridiculous. If I'm on a state website, that means I've done everything I needed to do to be there. But individual counties have different procedures where they want you to come in, kind of, just smooth them a little bit to let them know who you are, what you do, and they want to see you. They want to know who you are and what you do. That doesn't necessarily mean you got to physically go there, but like do a Zoom meeting with the coordinator of the One-Stop Center, and then they invite all the counselors, and you just really fill out some paperwork, and now they know what you're doing, and then they're really cognizant of who you are and what you do. So when they get that client in there that's saying, oh, well, I couldn't be a police officer because my feet were flat, but I still want to go into law enforcement to some degree. I was thinking about EMT or this, that. Well, wow, we got this great program that fills in all the blanks. And not only could you, teach people what you've learned, but you could also, we don't know what job is going to be out there in the future. And that's the criteria to fill it. And again, when you get state approved, you can also create your own certification. And it takes a little bit of time to get it nationally, but you wouldn't have any trouble.
Yeah. We build all of ours based on the FLETC, which is Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, based on their principle, and that was kind of my goal, was to kind of help build it along those lines. So with what you're saying,
you got to create your own name.
Yeah, I know. I'm over here thinking. I'm like, okay, hold on. I can manipulate a few of these to meet any state funding or requirement, I should say. And then the big thing I think with what you were just telling me, I think I like the idea of them like the states reviewing the course, because critiquing never bothers me. I always welcome someone critiquing the curriculum, because the whole goal is to make it better for the people that it's serving. At the aspect of providing for my family, yes, I have to do that, but the goal is to provide and to give something to the community member, whether that's the law enforcement member, the EMT member, or the everyday community member. So what you're saying, I like where it's going. We're definitely going to have to unpack that a little bit more, a little bit later on.
And you also can say we're state recognized, we're state approved. That's going to get you some kudos when you go to the federal level. You can say, I've done things and this is the other point I want to tell you. When you get approved, let's say in New Jersey, we do this collaboration, which I think I'm excited about. It's so much easier to go to another state and say, we already have this credential in New Jersey. We want, that they actually push you through sooner than the person doing it from scratch, because you have an existing credential in another state. And in the DC metro area, it's only like a one-page thing you got to fill out. You pay the money. You got to pay money.
Oh, yeah, of course. It's DC.
But it's only the one-page thing that you got to fill out and get a letter saying from New Jersey that you're in good standing, and that's it.
Well, like I said, I can't thank you enough for that insight, because that's pretty much what I'll be looking up later tonight and everything along those lines. My first thing is New Jersey State accreditation, and then following up with you on hey, because I'm sure I'll mess up some paperwork.
Vocational schools, no matter what state.
Yeah.
Google state approved private vocational schools.
Okay.
And it's not the same as accreditation, but once you're a private vocational school for like 2 years, because there's an accreditation period that you have to show that you've been successful, and that's how you get it. You start off as a private vocational school, and then you go to accreditation.
Excellent. Well, I can't thank you enough, Trina.
Thanks
for passing that info on to me.
You're certainly welcome. Thank you. And since we're passing on information, I want to tell you that Frank has opened up his big heart genuinely and generously. And I'm getting ready to pull this screenshot up. Let me just kind of get everything out the way so we can show it. And this is what his company is donating to our listening audience. And as soon as I get rid of that banner real quick, Frank, go ahead and tell them what you're doing for our listening audience, which is a whole lot. But in your own words, tell us.
I'll go down the list here and kind of explain everything. So that first one where it says firearms training, that's a 2-day e-training. I'm a big fan of taking everything to the the new technological side of things. So that firearms training is a 2-day training. It's actually super simple. It's a downloadable PDF, and with it comes a downloadable target. And it is, if you're a new firearm owner or an existing firearm owner, it's going to teach you pretty much basic marksmanship and safety. And it's just 30 minutes a day. It's a 2-day training, and it's just something that you can repeat over and over or expand upon it, but it's completely free. You'll just go in there, punch in your email, and we'll send it out to you. It's all automated, so you'll get it immediately. And all you have to do is go off of that link right there for the 2-day e-training. The next one I have down below that is beating a traffic ticket guide. This is my 3-step guide to beating any traffic ticket. Now, it's not going to completely help you beat a traffic ticket if you're going 30 mile over a speed limit or you're going 50 in a 25 school zone. However, it does give you the ability to beat it. I know my fellow law enforcement out there are saying, Frank, stop giving away our secrets. But it's going to pretty much give you 3 steps of how you need to set up the vehicle and everything like that to prevent you from, or to help mitigate the ability of you getting a ticket. Even if you do get a ticket, it's going to set you up for a better chance for you to actually be able to get the ticket dismissed in court. And if you do hire a lawyer, they're 100% going to thank you and me for you following those 3 steps. And being a new law school student that I am, I'm learning that a lot of lawyers are loving that 3-step guide. They're actually handing it out. The next one down is my free law enforcement training. And this is my law enforcement training that any law enforcement officer can take. It's about an hour-long workshop. And once again, they'll just go there, punch in their email address. We'll email them the workshop over. They can watch it at their leisure, or they can come back and replay it however they want. And this is going to cover consent, and this is going to cover helping communicate and helping de-escalation between individuals that maybe you contact, that law enforcement contact on the street or contact in a vehicle. And it's going to help them gain consent for whatever they need when dealing with a civilian member, so that they don't have to worry about by accidentally violating a Fourth Amendment right of the citizens they're protecting, or things along those lines. The next one down is actually our firearm safety courses, and they are roughly about 2.5 hours worth of content. And as I said, they're going to cover the gambits of exactly what it is that you need to know when you purchase a firearm or when you're manipulating a firearm. And I advocate for these so much so, just because I hate when I get a call, or I hate when I have to do a review of a unfortunate incident because there was a firearm mishap or some type of negligence with dealing with a firearm. So that is specifically for firearms. And there's 4 different classes in there. One is pistols, one is rifles, and one is shotguns. And then, or there's an entire package where you can get all 3 at a discounted level. And And for this one, if you look on the bottom of your page right there, you see that my IT team has thrown together a coupon to save anyone listening to Trina's show here, and we decided to give the discount code a shout out to you, the TByrd. So TBYRD, and you punch that into the coupon, and you're going to automatically get 20% off of any safety course that you all want to purchase. And then same thing with that, dealing with law enforcement. That is a pretty extensive 3-hour course. And this is what we were going over earlier about teaching civilians and teaching community members the limitations that law enforcement have, and then also the laws that they have that support them, and the laws that the community members have to support themselves, such as police officers can't extend a stop too long. It's going to go over a couple of the main constitutional rights that individuals have, such as Fourth Amendment, illegal searches and seizures. It's going to talk about how, and once again, law enforcement are going to get mad at me about this, but it's going to talk about how you should probably never speak to law enforcement if you're under investigation. Definitely exercise your rights to an attorney. And that's, as much as I make the joke that law enforcement might get upset about me with that, but it's really for the point of not having to worry about law enforcement violating someone's rights, or an individual feeling that they're not being treated fairly, to really help build that bridge back between our community members and our law enforcement members. I'm a big advocate of law enforcement. I've been in law enforcement my entire adult life since leaving the military. And I can say that, I really do support my brothers and sisters out there who are serving. I also understand that there are some bad apples out there, and I hate to use that term, bad apples, but there are some officers out there, whether it's intentionally or unintentionally, they make mistakes, and those mistakes can really, really lead to individuals having a hard go, whether it's in the criminal system or the legal system, trying to get their lives back on track. So that last course right there really helps individuals. So, hey, I'm not doing anything. You're doing whatever you want. I've taken this course. I know my lawyer's going to have a field day, and I just want to thank you right now for paying off my house. So, so that's kind of where I'm at with that one. Is like I said, I just really want the community to kind of come back together, and everyone just respect and support each other.
And every little bit helps, but this donation that you have made is huge, and we so appreciate it. And I definitely hope people take advantage of it, because it's, any type of information is valuable, but when it comes to safety, it's invaluable. So you definitely have to, take all of this serious, and, especially, teach your kids, do it as a family. Everybody sit down and go through it. And, what better way to really educate the entire family than to, take advantage of a free opportunity like what Frank and his company has just handed it to us on a silver platter. So we are grateful. I thank you for all my listening audience and the people who view our channel every week. We definitely appreciate it. And one of the things that we pride ourselves in doing is posting these shows everywhere we can, so people get the information. And I'm just grateful. I think this was one of our best shows that we've done. And safety is a big deal. I really think that what you're doing is so important to our future. So important.